What is going on, guys? It is Blink here, back with the new guide. So in this guide, we'll be talking about solo versus squads and the best tips and tricks to help you guys have a better chance of winning. Also, the V-Bucks giveaway is still going on, so make sure to visit the link in the description to enter. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications as opposed to Amazon gift card in the comments every time I upload. By turning on notifications, you'll have a way better chance of getting here first and redeeming that code. Anyways, guys, let's get to this guide. So, as you guys can see, I changed up my landing from Retail Row to Salty Springs, since I was going to Retail Row a little too often. Gotta freshen up the early game just a little. So, there's a player on the roof and I could have cut him off as he fell, but in squads it's best that I find some okay weapons first. Had I found a pistol, it would have been harder to fight off 4 players. So early game weapons is pretty important during solo versus squads. I did end up finding a shotgun, that's a great weapon to have. As long as you're building to protect yourself, then you can make it work. I also found a bolty, and that's my favorite weapon to have, so getting eliminated is not on my to-do list. There are players above me and they C4'd the whole basement, so taking that shield as soon as possible is what I had to do. Don't wait for the minis, you can hold the minis after finding them. Having some sort of shield can save you, that's why most of the time I don't really wait to use my shields, because you never know who can sneak up on you. 2 players jumped down and I held the right side peeking angle to make it much easier for myself. As you guys know, when players are on the right side of your screen, you're holding a better angle than them. I also built the wall after downing the first player. I then edited the wall as this player never expected the edit. In solos versus squads, you'll have to get pretty good at editing because fighting with just your materials won't always be enough. You might down 3 players but end up taking a lot of damage and the last player eliminates you. So knowing when a good time to use edits can help minimize the amount of damage you take. Now, it's not something you'll be doing all the time. As I said, knowing when a good time to use edits. So by practicing your edits, you'll have a much easier time figuring out when to use it. Right here, I tried sniping the skinned player as he seemed a little better. So I wanted to down him to give me an easier time fighting the second player. I got the down and the second player wasn't too much of an issue. You guys now might be wondering who you should snipe at first. The more experienced player or the less experienced? Well, if you suspect someone being better and they are both easy targets to snipe at, then go for the player you suspect that is better. Now, as I said, if they are both easy shots. If the better player is jumping around, then don't try sniping. You'll usually want to go for the player that's running without any jumps, as it's much easier of a sniper lineup. So basically, you'll always want to go for the player that's an easy target out of the 4, because you'll have a better chance of hitting your shot. So, I picked up a rocket launcher, and rocket launchers are super good to use during solo squads for a few reasons. It's got some high damage to players and structures. Say I have someone building up to me, I can put on some damage and collapse him from a structure because the rockets will still do damage to the materials he's on. So, especially if you're being pushed by multiple players, one rocket can drop them to the ground. That way, that player now has to rebuild back up and is temporarily out of the fight. There was a few more players inside the house. Got one with the rocket and the second one was pretty close to eliminating me. After eliminating the second player, I placed floors over top of me because I don't know if there's someone above. Placing floors above stops anyone from surprisingly jumping down on me. You have to be extra careful in squads because there's more of a chance of players wandering around. So make sure you guys are building yourself cover as much as you can. You guys can also see I'm not switching my gray AR for any other weapons. No matter the burst color, I would have kept my gray AR. I need as many weapons as possible that can deal structural damage. The rocket and the fully auto rifle is the best combo. Yeah, I can do much more player damage with an upgraded burst, but that's exactly what my sniper's for. If I got an open shot on a player, I'll pull out that sniper for that high damage. So, I make sure I've got as much health as possible before heading out. Getting off those extra bandages is crucial, especially when you're fighting 4 players. After bandaging, I head out to see if I missed anything else. Usually after a fight, you want to loot as fast as you can because you don't have time to sit around for too long. This can result in you missing better loot. So go back to the places you fought and just double check if you missed out on something good. Not much else was found, so I move on to gather materials. Materials are going to be your biggest priority in a solo vs squad scenario. Most of the time you'll find squads just constantly spraying at your materials because they try to get as many shots through them as they could. Especially if you're alone, most fights will consist of all 4 players just constantly spamming and spamming. And if that ever happens, you need to have a solid amount of materials to plan out your next move. Also, remember to add those jumps as you're hitting trees. I'll keep mentioning it as we have new players checking out the channel every day. Jumping while hitting trees makes it harder for anyone trying to snipe you. You never know who's watching you as you're gathering. So make sure you're making it harder for them to hit their shots. They might hit you in the body, but we're trying to line up your head. Much better getting shot in the body than the head. That headshot would have put me back in the lobby, so make sure you guys are adding those jumps. I'll skip through this a little as I was gathering materials for a little bit. So I can see this player in the distance, and I knew he can see me too. I never built because I never wanted him to know I saw him. Had I built, he would have probably done the same. I utilized that house wall for that right side peeking angle and lined up a shot. He never saw it coming as he thought I had no clue. This is super similar to when I talked about edit peeking. You want to bait players into thinking you're clueless. This relaxes your opponents a little and they forget to protect themselves because they're so confident in eliminating you. Baiting players into thinking you're clueless on playing out this situation is a really good strategy during solo squads. Now, my game did lag a little earlier in the match. I'm not sure if it was my internet or the server. Both of my sniper shots somehow missed and I had a feeling something was up. So after I built cover, my wall wouldn't show up and then my stairs wouldn't show up too. This fight did have a few internet issues which made it a little harder. So I dropped down to heal up with the med kit. As I said guys, you want as much health as possible when you're entering your next fight. Once again, I was in a situation where this player thought he had me struggling. By me replacing my wall every time, he thought he had me. What I ended up doing was making sure to place a wall, that way I can edit peek him because he's just going to try shooting the wall down again. This gave me an easy sniper lineup as he's just standing still behind his materials. It gave me time to heal before fighting off the last players of the team. Now, as I moved on, I tried building up, but this player kept spamming. So what I did was build backwards and tried utilizing the right side peeking angle to see if I can snipe him as he's spamming my materials. He ended up building towards me with one floor, so I tried shooting it down to see if I can drop him into taking fall damage. Not possible, but I did hit a shot onto him and changed my angle, that way I can build above him. He beat me to the high ground and I accidentally fell off. So what I ended up doing was fighting the player that tried to revive the one I downed. I downed this player too, and now there's only one last player I had to worry about. Make sure you're building for that cover. Super important to use as many materials as you need to keep yourself safe. So I don't have the high ground and the floors above my head are super important. I can use them to edit peek above me and figure out what my opponent's trying to do. It's also a great way of lining up a sniper shot if he decides to shoot down on me. He never ended up shooting down and I boxed myself in as it sounded like he was dropping down. Once I noticed he was still above me, I instantly got out of my box because I expected him to spray my roof and I've got no cover inside this box except for the roof. He did exactly that, so I pulled out my sniper to take the shot. It's a harder shot to hit, but anytime a player is standing still, you'll have a pretty good chance of hitting the shot. I made sure to look around for any loot I could have missed after fighting just in case. Gathering your opponent's materials is also super important. Having close to max amounts will give you more time to think in fights. Now, yeah, I'm absolutely the king of missing ARs. For some reason, I'll miss an upgraded AR most of the time, and I never know why. Yeah, I missed that green AR, and I'm not sure why, it's just something that happens. I also replaced my medkit with 2 half shields. I would have done it even with 3 medkits. Having shields is much more protective than having medkits. By the time you lose all 100 HP of your shield, you've only lost a bit of health. Not sure the exact numbers, but it's pretty good. So I always carry shields over medkits as my health bar takes minimal damage. So, I'll skip through this as there was a lot of running for the past few minutes. I heard shots up on this mountain and went to see if I can catch any players in the back. I'm usually pushing players in these solo versus squads because that's the only way you're going to get better. Sitting in a fort won't really improve your chances of winning over time. Putting yourself in those 1v4 situations is what's going to keep pushing your skills to that next level. Me and this player built off for the high ground and had to make sure to add extra cover as best as I can because he also had a rocket. Fighting players with rockets is much more risky when you're having a build battle, since one rocket can drop you down to the ground just like I did to this player. He never ended up getting downed, so he must have built onto something as he was falling. Never pushed him as I'm not sure where his teammates can be. I held that high ground and spotted for anyone else. Almost downed another player, which would have been helpful. But once again, I'm not pushing these players as I don't know where their teammates can be. In solo vs squads, you have to really analyze your surroundings. That way you don't walk into a trap of players that makes it harder to recover from. You really need to be careful when fighting. Now, I got lower as players were taking shots at the structure. The last thing you want is to fall to your death, so make sure you're getting low enough that way you won't be at risk of falling to your death. Now, I boxed myself in as I heard a player above me. He ended up dropping down, so I did the same and caught him trying to shoot another player. Kept the pressure on his materials and we ended up fighting it out. You guys can see I never shot for a while because I pulled up my rocket and then I switched back to my shotgun and AR since the rocket might have potentially killed us both. I rarely use rockets so I can accidentally pull it out in very risky situations like I did here. After fighting, build yourself up a little higher to see if you can spot for any more opponents. You don't want to get caught out on the low ground looting and then get jumped by a team of 4. I did spot a player poking his head out, so I was scoping in and out super quickly because I wasn't sure if he was trying to line me up too. I did this to try baiting out a shot from him. Nothing happened, so I had a slight angle on his head and got the knock. Pushed and I was able to catch his teammate reviving him. rocketed both of them, and with that rocket, I was able to add a jump shot for a quick elimination. That's another great reason of utilizing the rocket. I can add a jump shot and one rocket can eliminate both players. That jump shot exposes me for a split second. I could have pulled up my AR too, but I would have been standing still a little longer. Just something to take a note of when playing solo squads. Right after the elimination, I looted them up quickly because all the materials I can get I'll grab. This was the last team, and I had to be super careful when fighting because this team might be the hardest in the game, as they made it just this far. See if you can get a snipe on one of them because one less player will make it much easier to start the fight. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible, and these guys got way too close, so I had to try holding that high ground as I'm looking for openings to shoot these players. So when you're building, make sure you're really trying to find weak points in your opponent's building. I was able to get a knock onto an opponent quickly with the rocket. Never needed to stop and shoot my AR, as the rocket was enough for the knock. Once again, the rocket is a super good way of avoiding standing still and getting an easy knock. I was also able to knock another player going for the revive, which leaves me at a 1v2 situation. I dropped down low to the ground because my goal is to try to separate myself from each player. I want to have as many 1v1 fights as possible to give me a better chance of winning. So basically what you want to do is change up your angles as much as possible and separate yourself from each player. Having a big material mess gives you a massive advantage because you're able to change up your positioning much easier without getting spotted. Now, me and this player built off for that high ground, and the risk of rockets is shooting one straight into a wall. It's one of the worst things that can happen. This is why you have to be extra careful when you've got a rocket launcher. Good players will put walls right into your face and it might be just too late to stop it. Luckily I had shields, which I proceeded to at least use one before continuing the fight. I can hear these players building up, but some sort of shield will just keep me safe from getting one-shotted. One of them was a player I knocked before. He got revived, and that's usually why I try to finish off these players after a fight. It keeps me from fighting a 1v8 instead of a 1v4. So as I finished this player, I built floors above me because I knew the last player wasn't on my level. These floors above my head saved me from taking any damage. And remember what I said, I'm able to run around this big material mess and change up my positioning. If I really want, I can build up from any angle up to my opponent, and he might not even notice it. That's the beauty of having so many random materials placed everywhere. So I made sure to take my last shield because it's the last fight of the game. Gotta have as much healing as possible. I actually tried seeing if I can find a medkit laying around before taking this fight. Running around in circles, making sure I'm adding those roofs as much as I can just so I can find this medkit. I had no luck, and the only thing I can find was one mini. I grabbed it anyways as it might be the one item that saves me from getting eliminated. I always try having every slot filled in my inventory during most of the game. Even if it's an item you don't think you'll be using, just pick it up as it might be handy during a fight. My last slot is always some sort of meds, whether it's a bandage or shields. I always feel much more comfortable carrying some sort of healing item. Now, this last player started taking shots from above, and what he never expected was for me to pull out my sniper. If you got the snipe, pull it out. It's super good when you're getting sprayed at from above. It's a harder shot to hit when your opponent's above as you can only get an angle on his head, but he's not moving. Any player that's not moving, you can usually hit the shot much easier than a player moving without cover. Well guys, that's it for this gameplay walkthrough guide. Hopefully I've helped some people out, and a like and a sub will be greatly appreciated as it does help me out a lot. Anyways guys, thanks for watching, and hope you have a great rest of your day or night, and I'll see you on the next one.